Hey,
Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie giving a shout out to
Something else.
something else, Daddy.
This is Nickel Matara, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Arya.
and welcome to episode number 142 of Something Else. Feast your ear holes in this week's episode as we take a look at Mid-South Wrestling and World Class Championship Wrestling from November 19th, 1983. My name is Arya, and joining me, as always, is the Jake Paul to my Mike Tyson. It's Trae. Trae, how the hell are you tonight?
No, I'm not fucking being Jake Paul in any context. Fuck that.
Joining me is Amir Tyson to my Mike Tyson. It's Trae. Trae, how the hell are you tonight?
I don't know who Amir Tyson is.
I think it's Mike Tyson's son. He was interviewing Mike in the locker room, and then Mike walked away with his naked ass on screen.
Uh,
Um, we're not going to break kayfabe here on this show or anything, but we're recording the show Friday night at the same time Netflix is attempting to broadcast the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. Um, there's been a lot of streaming issues all night long, and of course, this comes back to wrestling because in 2 months they're going to be airing Raw every single Monday night. So, and they've had a month, months to work on the stream. Now, it probably goes without saying that, you know, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, no matter what you think about the two people involved in it, Jake Paul and Mike Tyson is going to be a far more seen show than any episode of Raw. So it's possible that, their streaming can handle a lot lower volume, but by and large, uh, they have a lot of work to do.
feel like they should have been prepared for this, but what do I know?
I mean, they really should have been. It's not, I mean, I'm not giving them a free pass at all or anything. I'm just saying that, because this fight wasn't supposed to be July originally, so they've had at least 6 months to work on this. So if I was
Look,
WWE,
if Mike
I hope
Tyson
that.
doesn't murder this fucker in the first round, sorry.
Mhm. Go ahead.
If Mike Tyson doesn't murder this fucker in the first round, I don't ever want to hear another goddamn word about wrestling being fake.
See, the problem is it's Jake Paul is not fighting 30-year-old Mike Tyson. He's not fighting fucking Mike Tyson in his fucking prime. He's fighting a man who's almost 60 years old. And like ultimately at the end of the day, like Jake Paul, I mean he's not making a career out of this, but like all of his boxing fights, who is he fighting? He's fighting like either legend Hall of Fame boxers or he's fighting, MMA fighters. Like, didn't he fight Anderson Silva one time? It's like Anderson Silva's a lot of things, but he's not a boxer. No
So
matter, like,
stupid. It's all so stupid.
I've got a serious question. I seriously have no fucking idea. Who the hell are Jake and Logan Paul? Like, what were they before they suddenly became famous by doing random sporting events?
Weren't they just fucking idiots on YouTube that amuse 10-year-old boys for whatever reason?
I I just assume that's the majority of the fucking world these days, except for us. We don't amuse anybody except each other.
That's true. No 10-year-old boys get any joy out of this podcast.
That's probably a good thing.
I would hope so.
Um, this is going to be an interesting summation of this week's episode. What we discuss on this week's show: why 10-year-old boys don't like us. When the
Well,
police show up at your door on Wednesday morning, you'll know why.
no, we said they don't like us.
Oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. I figure after my Donald Trump rant, if they didn't shove in my door then, they're probably not going to show up in my door now.
Just wait until
So,
January.
so you may be sitting out there, fans, listeners, wondering, okay, when the hell are we going to talk about the wrestling on this show? In about an hour, you might be wondering when the hell are we going to talk about the wrestling on this show? Because um, we are at, in many ways, the season finale of Mid-South Wrestling because next week is finally the week where it starts over. Next week is when Bill Dundee comes in as Booker. Next week is when they bring in, all these great wrestlers. And next week is when we turn the dial up on Mid-South Wrestling. And man, oh man, I don't know like what the original plans were, but you watch this show, it's like they threw in the fucking towel. Grizzly Smith should be ashamed of the card he put together this week.
Putting this card together was the worst thing Grizzly Smith has ever done.
Yeah. There is like we've had some short, you know, episodes here talking about Mid-South. And actually the reason why I started doing World Class was because there was a show back in March that like nothing happened and I'm like, okay, I there's no way I can get 30 minutes out of this show. So I watched World Class just to pad the runtime. And if we were just doing
World,
Mid-South, we'd be done in like 20 minutes.
World Class this week might have been even worse.
I I mean, I haven't looked at the notes, but I like to think World Class has something to talk about. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
guess
guess it
it's
does have
probably
stuff to
not.
talk about.
I guess it's not really that great either, but still, Mid-South, like my Smoky Mountain notes last week were pretty short. My Mid-South notes are shorter than that. But,
Well,
well,
maybe,
let's dive into the show. And by the way, this week's opening theme for Mid-South was brought to you by Dr. Death Steve Williams steamrolling someone. And we'll actually get to that later on in the episode. But let's go to the intro with good old JR Jim Ross and our favorite color commentator, Buddy Nichols from KALB TV in Alexandria, Louisiana.
Again, everybody, and welcome to Mid-South Wrestling. I'm Jim Ross, and I'll be your host for the next exciting hour of Mid-South Wrestling action. And with me here today, Buddy Nichols from KALB TV, the sports director down in Alexandria. Buddy, it's great to have you with us here, and we've got a great card for matchmaker Grizzly Smith, and I'm happy to have you here, and we've got a great card to talk about.
Well, Jim, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be working with you here for the next hour. It looks like a full hour of action.
Certainly does. We've got the Mid-South Tag Team Champions here. The big Russian Nikolai Volkov will be here. We have a special montage on Hacksaw Jim Duggan that we'll introduce today that I think you'll be very interested in. Also, the great tag team combination of Magnum TA and Mr. Wrestling 2 will team up right here today for live wrestling action. We'll also see Leaping Lenny Poffo and Crusher Darso. They'll be here. It's going to be a great hour. You saw some great footage from Houston, from Steve Dr. Death Williams as we opened, and it's going to be a great hour. We started off with a lot of action, so let's go to the ring now in our first match with Reeser Bowden.
Okay. Did you notice that Buddy Nichols never looked up? like JR and Buddy had a piece of paper with, what's going to happen on this show on it. And Buddy spent the entire time staring at the piece of paper that was sitting on the table.
Maybe he was just fascinated by maybe it was a font he had never seen before.
Maybe he was like, I thought wrestling was real. What the hell is this? Although I can't imagine, the format was anything more than just the format, you know. I
Yeah.
can you like we've seen like over the past 10, 15 years like scripts leak onto the internet. Can you imagine what would have happened in 1983 if they had more than just the bare bones written on one of these things and it got grabbed by one of the fans, by one of the marks?
Bill Watts would have murdered somebody.
Indeed. Indeed. We thought some of the rants he's had the last few weeks were epic. He would have booked himself against the fan right here on the show next week to prove that it was real. So on this week's show, there's going to be some stuff. We're going to have a special
Uh,
montage about Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and we're going to have some people wrestling. This is such a weird
Gotta
ass
be a
show. Like,
montage.
it's like, there's no Junkyard Dog on this show. I don't think there's any Jim Duggan on the show. I mean, other than the Jim Duggan music video, I guess. But I mean, like, other than that, like, this is such a nothing show. And I hate to, like, harp on that, but it's like they threw in the towel on this week's show.
I mean, why wouldn't they?
Really, one second here. Um, talk about our opening match here for a minute while I look something up.
Okay, the opening match was Butch Reed and Jim Neidhart against George Weingeroff's penis and Tony Torres. Neidhart pinned Tony Torres with a Samoan drop in under 4 minutes. And Weingeroff was just baffled that his partner got pinned so easily. And I don't know why, because Neidhart wins with that move every week. So I don't maybe he couldn't see it. Maybe he's so nearsighted that he couldn't see that his partner just got hit with the other guy's finishing move. This was the nothing match.
I mean, he is legally blind. Um, I noted that JR said that Neidhart had won the anvil throwing contest, and Nichols chimed in by saying that he heard Neidhart threw it a good distance. You think? I'm shocked that the guy who won threw it a good distance.
Isn't that what it's judged on? I would think.
I would
Great,
assume they're
great
not being judged
contribution.
on form. It's like, oh,
Great
on form,
contribution to
Jim
the
Knight.
commentary
Yeah.
by Buddy Nichols.
So I found what I don't want to give this a full pass on this, but I found what may have led to this show being such a throwaway show. So this show
Okay.
aired on Saturday, November 19th, and in a lot of markets, like I think in the New Orleans market, it aired at 5 p.m. local time. Well, that night was the November Superdome show. So
Ah.
there were so basically if you were really interested in the area, you were going to be at that show anyway. But also the show only draws 8,000 people, so really doesn't tell you a whole lot here. And I get normally they would hold these shows on Thanksgiving, but because of the college football game, they agreed to do the weekend before Thanksgiving. But do you want to know the card for this show?
Sure.
So now keep in mind this is from ProWrestlingHistory.com. There may be some missing underneath matches. They only list 5 matches on the show. Dusty Rhodes went to a double countout with Nikolai Volkov. Kerry Von Erich pinned Max. David Von Erich defeated Kamala by count out. The Road Warriors defeated Mr. Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA. And in the main event, North American champion Junkyard Dog defeated Butch Reed.
I am just certain that there is a tape of that Kerry Von Erich and Max match, and it'll be what's played on loop after I die and go to hell.
It could have been worse. It could have been Mike Von Erich versus Max.
That's yeah, that may have actually been worse. You're right. I guess I should count my blessings.
Nikolai Volkov versus Mike Jackson and Randy Barber. And Reeser Bowden always gives great introductions for handicap matches. And this was no different as he tells us that this is what's called a handicap match where one man wrestles two men. I I gotta say, you don't get ring announcers like Reeser anymore, and that's so awful because it's like, yeah,
It
Reeser was
is.
not very good at the end of the day, but there was something charming about that, you know? Like
Yes,
I
it is. There's always a charm to the announcer that has no idea what's going on. Like, even up to like, Don West and TNA and fucking you remember Mike Hogwood on like the early days of Ring of Honor on HDNet?
Flap the porpoise. Oh Lord, yeah, it's like, I think that's actually why I liked Mike Adamle because it was like I wasn't gonna watch ECW at the time anyway, so it's like, hey, let's see if Mike Adamle ever gets any better. And I would argue that like he did get better, just that, he still wasn't very good and he was definitely a fish out of water. Um, and I'll be honest, I marked out for him as general manager of Raw.
I think that was the period that I didn't watch a lot of wrestling because my ex made me so goddamn miserable.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I mean, it was fucking like 15, 17 years ago, whatever.
I mean, I can still feel bad for you, you know.
Uh,
But so I actually, and again, this is one of those times where like my long ass memories got like you wonder what the hell is wrong with me. So there was an episode of Raw after a pay-per-view where Mike Adamle announced that as general manager, he has he has to defend the world title. And I know what he meant, but everyone took that as meaning that Mike Adamle said that Mike Adamle, had to defend the world title on pay-per-view. I'm like, that's not what he meant. He meant that he, as general manager, has to make sure the world title is defended on pay-per-view.
we should have defended the title against the Taz.
Uh, I, I think told the story on the show before, and you probably already know it. But that's why Brian Kendrick became the Brian Kendrick, and why his finish was called the Kendrick, was because it was a rib on Adamle.
You think Adam Lee was smart enough to get the joke?
I'm sure he was. I mean, the guy wasn't an idiot or anything. I mean, he did. I guess he took some head injuries probably because he played in the NFL, back in the day. And I mean, that was a shoot. Like, it's not like, oh, Baron Corbin played in the NFL. No, Mike Adamle played in the NFL. You
I
know,
did not know that.
yeah. Um,
How
but
about that?
one last thing about this Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. So they're at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, and all I can think of is, getting stuck in the parking lot next to a Walmart. And unfortunately, when they just showed an aerial shot of the stadium, they didn't show the Walmart next to the parking lot.
There was a not a rickshaw. I always want to call them rickshaws, the pedicabs. Like,
Yep.
and it's not a pedicab because they're a bike instead of walking. You know what I mean? And I just got one of those and I gave the guy like whatever cash I had on me, like $30. And I was like, just take me as far away from this building as that will get me. And then I had my friend meet me and pick me up.
Nice.
Yeah.
But by the way, whatever gym Jake Paul's training at, they have a frame picture of the Royal Rumble spot where Logan Paul and Ricochet gave each other a springboard clothesline at the same time.
That's pretty cool. I was in Dallas last week and I saw like a big ass, it wasn't a billboard, it was a side of a fucking building that was painted with the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson thing. And I didn't put two and two together. I didn't realize until today that it was at AT&T Stadium.
By the way, in case you're curious how we got here from Nikolai Volkov versus Mike Jackson and Randy Barber, this one's totally on me. Um, Volkov demanded everyone stand and salute for the Russian national anthem. Um, I noted here that Jackson and Barber apparently did not have to follow the rules of wrestling, as they were not required to tag in and out. Um, and I wrote that booking this match was obviously the worst thing that Grizzly Smith has ever done. Little did I know the entire card was, but whatever here. Volkov dropped Barber at throat first on the top rope, and Barber took that like a fucking champ. You know, I I don't know if anyone told Barber that, wrestling is fake and you're not supposed to really hang yourself up on the top rope, but man, oh man, that looked nasty.
I respect the effort. It's about the only thing I respect about this match. This sucked. I'm sorry.
Well,
I normally I try to be constructive. I got nothing constructive to say about this. This was bad.
see, I thought Nikolai Volkov thought that he was Roman Reigns and Mike Jackson and Randy Barber were Daniel Bryan and Edge at WrestleMania, as he stacked them up on top of each other and then pinned them both at the same time.
Okay. Now JR said that Volkov pinned both of them, and I'm just gonna be pedantic here. No. Mike Jackson was on his stomach on top of Barber. Volkov pinned Barber with Mike Jackson.
I noted that Volkov was very happy about winning, and I was like, good for him. I'm happy that he's happy.
Me too, late Nikolai.
So even though Bill Watts is not on this week's show, don't stop and think that that means that we're not getting any geopolitical ramblings here. As let's go to geopolitical Jim Ross, who's going to introduce our Jim Duggan video package.
Well, Buddy, as you well know, many of the things going on around this world are things that we'd rather forget, but we cannot forget things when lives are taken and when lives are put in jeopardy, and the third world powers are going against the United States. It seems like the United States has been much maligned in the last few weeks, and we saw some tremendous weapons just a few moments ago with the big Russian Nikolai Volkov. But we've got this special piece here, and I think it's very timely, don't you?
I think so, Jim. Like you say, America is involved in a lot of problems away from our nation, but I think this piece on Jim Hacksaw Duggan is a good display of American patriotism.
Well, I think it'll fire you up, wrestling fans. This piece was produced by Scott Munns, and with a little help from the Charlie Daniels Band in America. Let's see the great piece on Hacksaw Duggan right now.
Okay. So it's funny because I didn't catch the part of the Charlie Daniels Band until I was rewatching it now, because I literally was Googling what the hell this song was and found it was In America by the Charlie Daniels Band. And I mean, it's your standard garden variety video package. It starts talking about Duggan turning babyface earlier this year when he broke a board on Ted DiBiase, and then it segued into just your standard stuff. Duggan beats some people up, and puts the guy over. That puts the guy that hasn't been on the show in a few weeks over here.
Not the best Charlie Daniels Band song.
What was that?
Said not the best Charlie Daniels Band song.
No. And I mean, I'm not a Charlie Daniels Band fan, but I mean, I imagine that he has plenty of songs better than that.
I mean, surely you've heard The Devil Went Down to Georgia.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, I'd have to look at like their discography to like really tell you any other songs.
You know, I heard someone say, or I read it somewhere, that The Devil Went Down to Georgia is such a quintessentially American type of narrative because only like Americans apparently are the only ones that have, I don't know, the hubris, the arrogance to write a song about, yeah, the devil challenged me and I fucking kicked his ass because I'm better than him.
I mean, does that surprise you at all?
It doesn't. It doesn't.
So right now I'm like looking into the future because the Superdome show that's today is the lowest drawing Superdome show up to this point, and I'm trying to see when that gets beaten, and it's not until April of 1987, which is around the time they get bought by Jim Crockett. And April 11th, 1987 drew 3,000 people to the Superdome.
Jeez.
And by that, and at
That.
this point, like I asked Dave once and he ignored me, why Jim Crockett kept running Superdome shows with UWF, like if it was a contracted thing or what, because they did shows in June of 87 and August of 87 that were pretty much 95% UWF shows. And like the June show, June 87 drew 3,500, as did August 87. And I mean, I don't even know who one of these people are, but for the sake of historical purposes, the main event of the last UWF/slash Mid-South Superdome show, August 1st, 87, the Freebirds versus Black Bart, Big Bubba Rogers, and the Terminator in a steel cage first blood elimination match. I don't know who the fuck the Terminator is. And
Arnold Schwarzenegger, isn't it?
I'm sure. I'm sure that's who it was. Looking at the undercard, um, the semi-main was Dusty Rhodes and Dr. Death beating Eddie Gilbert and Dick Murdoch in a double bull rope match. Our good friend Tim Horner and Brad Armstrong versus the Midnight Express. Pardon me, Sting versus the Enforcer. Rick Steiner versus Chris Adams. Barry Windham versus Shaska Watley. And it's getting worse from there going down the card. And it wasn't
That's
exactly light
the
world on fire with those matches.
Dusty and Doc against Eddie Gilbert and Dick Murdoch sounds pretty good.
I bet that was good. But I mean, good Lord, I can't believe they even attempted to run the Superdome with these shows. The Viking is in the April 87 Superdome. I I don't know when he actually begins wrestling, but I really hope that's Tony Halama, Ludwig Borga.
I really I really hope that that's El Vikingo, the father of Elio del Vikingo.
Are you also our Mexican wrestling expert on the show?
No, I really don't know shit about Lucha.
Okay, I was gonna ask because I mean, I assume there's somebody named El Vikingo, because otherwise, that's how you get it, El Hijo de Vikingo. But yeah, I got
Well,
no idea who the hell that is.
I mean, there's no Zack Sabre Sr., so
Good question. Good point. Um, by the way, outside of those last few shows, the next least drawing show is the day before WrestleMania 1. They draw 9,500 for Jim Duggan versus Ted DiBiase in a loser leaves town tuxedo street fight coal miner's glove steel cage match. Exhale. And
did they do the closed circuit thing at the Superdome?
I don't believe so.
Or did they
I
do one
could
in
be.
New Orleans at all? Maybe at like the I don't know, the
Oh,
easy for me to say, the municipal auditorium.
WrestleMania? Maybe? I thought you meant the Mid-South shows.
Oh, because
So,
you know what? You know what? It was on fucking pay-per-view in the New Orleans market, remember?
huh? Are you trying to tell me something?
I'm making a point.
For those who wish to hear my response to that, check out 40 Years of Pay-Per-View, Book 1, 1985 through 1990, for two sentences where I kind of discussed that.
Indeed.
Um, Magnum TA and Mr. Wrestling 2 versus Doug Vines and Jeff Swords. I know I mentioned this a lot when he's on TV, but Mid South likes to put quotations around people's fake names, like Magnum TA. They got the quotes around Magnum, or when Andre was here, they had quotes around the Giant. Mr. Wrestling 2 has no quotes, meaning that his legal name is Mr. Wrestling 2. Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling had a baby that they named Mr.
No, Mr. and Mrs. Two had a baby that they named Wrestling.
Hmm. But then wouldn't he be Mr. Wrestling 2 Jr.?
Well, we don't know what his father's name was.
True. So we're going with the idea that his first name is Wrestling, not his last name.
Correct. His last name is
I,
Two.
I mean that makes sense because semi-frequently they do just call him Wrestling 2.
I mean, that makes as much sense as anything else about this, I guess.
Um, so JR points out that 2 season TA what a lot of people do. So what you're saying is 2 is no more special than anyone else since everybody saw the same thing? Good for him. Now, I did note that as snarky as I'm being, and will no doubt continue to be, these two did put some thought into, you know, being a team. And, Mid-South doesn't really have tag teams. We've known it now for 2 years, ever since the Samoans left territory, that the tag team titles are just held by two singles wrestlers who have a loose alliance. And this is like the first time since the Samoans, in my opinion, where this feels like a tag team. They feel like they put some thought into this. They sat down and obviously they still have some work to do, but they put in some thought, they put in some effort into being an actual tag team and not just two singles wrestlers uh, being put together.
Yeah, they did a spot where TA did an arm wringer to set up Two hitting the knee lift, and that was kind of neat. But yeah, the debut of the Two and TA team against the Devils duo, Doug Vines and Jeff Sword. They're clearly right at the beginning. You can tell they're being built to wrestle Reed and Neidhart for the title. And I don't know, by the standards of what is typical for the show, this was pretty decent. They stole the show, but it was petty theft.
See, I thought it was notable that TA hit the knee lift, but that wasn't the finish. Um, the match just continued, and the Jobbers got offense on two. And then TA had to come in and hit Vines with the belly to belly for the win. And so I think it was a nice subtle way to kind of tell you, hey, take a little bit of a step back from two and take a little bit of a step forward for TA, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
I like this pairing, and I mean, two isn't, someone who's going to set the world on fire, especially at this point in his career. But, this ends up being a really interesting pairing and a really interesting storyline moving forward.
Yeah, I have a kind of a general idea of where this is going, and just based on what I've heard, like it sounds like it's going to be pretty good.
By the way, I'm going to tell you the most obvious thing you've ever heard in your life. Mauro
Okay.
Ranallo has aged.
Oh, well,
I mean,
I guess I
obviously, I mean, he, you know, Go
they
ahead.
never did they ever show him on camera at the Maple Leaf Pro shows? I don't remember. I didn't notice
I
anything
actually
if they did.
I never watched those shows.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, well, it's
No. I
okay.
I was going to. I have them torrented, but I haven't watched them yet. But
You know,
yeah,
sometimes stuff gets away from you.
yeah, they are showing him with Rosie Perez, whoever the hell that is, and Roy Jones Jr. They're doing the commentary, and it's like he's still got the voice, but he's definitely aged since leaving WWE, whatever, however the hell long ago
Well,
that was.
it's been several years ago now. We have aged as well, I hate to tell you.
What? No.
Your hair looks
There's
tremendous, by the way.
Thank you so much. I got it cut and dyed tonight, and I had to make sure to take a bunch of pictures because I'm sorry, I'm lazy. It's not going to look this way for very long.
It's a good color. I like the color.
It worked really well. Shout out to Khalida at Sensation Salon in New Bedford, Mass. She does a tremendous
Shout
job.
out, shout out to Kalita.
Speaking of people I don't want to give a shout out to, Larry Higgins was out next versus Art Cruz. Now, longtime listeners of this show will recall that, the last time Larry Higgins was around, he was in Paul Orndorff's last Mid-South match, and he was so fucking bad. He couldn't run the ropes. He no-sold Orndorff's finish. He kicked out at 3.1, and Orndorff basically had to kick and stomp at him after the bell and then confront him backstage. And Higgins, I think, appeared a couple more times after that, but that was the last we saw of him. Now, I will say that even though Cage Match doesn't appear to show him wrestling at all since, it's pretty obvious he was wrestling somewhere because he he's not great or anything, but he is not the worst wrestler I've ever seen in my life on this show.
So this is really dumb, but every time, like every other week when we get to the new set of tapings, I'll watch the first show and then I'll go into my wrestling record book, Mid-South UWF 1979 to 1987 by Mark James, and I'll just get the because I want to know the date of the taping, and then so I'll just jot down all of the matches for the next, the first week and the next week. And so I I saw Hacksaw something and Art Cruz, and my brain just auto corrected to Hacksaw Duggan. So I had written down that Hacksaw Duggan wrestled Art Cruz, and I was very confused when it was instead Larry Higgins, who is apparently known in some circles as Hacksaw Higgins, and was misidentified as such here in the record book.
Yep. He has. I mean, he kind of goes all over the place, but he was in WCW as a jobber as Hacksaw Higgins too. But I mean, this like they already have two fucking hacksaws. We don't need a third hacksaw in this territory. Um,
Spelled his name
now
wrong, by the way. They had Higgenes, which I've known a lot of people with the last name Higgins, and nobody's name has been spelled that way. So, who does these fucking chyrons? Just I want to know. I just want to talk to them.
it's take your daughter to work day and let her do your job. Um, but by the way, I don't know how closely were you watching this match?
um, medium.
Okay. What the hell was on Larry Higgins' boots?
I didn't notice his boots. I noticed his tights were
His
disconcerting.
his this is gonna sound weird because I mean, when has Kamala ever worn boots? But they look like boots that were designed for Kamala because they had the star and honestly, I was convinced it was a banana underneath it, but I mean, I'm pretty sure it wasn't a fucking banana. It was probably a crescent moon. But uh, yeah, It's like he had a star and a yellow crescent object on his boots.
Oh my God. Have you ever heard Lawler tell the story of when like they first started the Kamala thing in Memphis? And every show he would paint the stars and the crescent moon. And one day Kamala goes, "Mr. Lawler, why you always draw that banana on my belly?"
I did hear that. And all I had to explain to him that it's not a banana, it's the moon. Oh, Lord. I, I, he's like, it's sad that I never got to meet the guy, but like every story you hear about, he sounds like such a sweet man. A little naive, of course, but like a very sweet man.
Yes. James
Uh,
Harris of Senatobia, Mississippi, by all accounts, a lovely man.
yeah, tip of the hat to him. Um,
Yeah.
and by the way, I noted that the match was going fine until JR talked about how he was in Hawaii. And while in Hawaii, people wanted to talk to him about Junkyard Dog. And then Higgins suddenly reverted back to 1982. He went for a body slam, and I don't know. I think Cruz was supposed to slip behind him, but instead Higgins almost dropped him on his head. Um, Higgins had trouble taking a backdrop, and then he took a bump by falling on his ass. And then he somehow won. He won with an elbow drop. Wrong man won.
This was weird because early on I was thinking that it wasn't too bad. And then by the end, like, what the fuck was this mess? And I did indeed note that they fucked up a body slam. And it was weird because the announcers were kind of putting over Art Cruz. So you thought that maybe he was going to get a win here. And then he didn't.
Nope. Poor Cruz doing the JOB here.
Indeed.
Lanny Poffo versus John King. Great commentary here by our good friend Buddy Nichols. If he is anything like his press releases, then he is special. Did Lanny put out a lot of press releases, do you think?
If anybody in this territory was putting out press releases about themselves, it was Lenny Poffo.
Probably. I note that John King kind of looks like Ted DiBiase, and he wrestles like Ted DiBiase probably would today in 2024. Where the hell did they get this week's jobbers?
I don't know. Lanny was doing some really nifty stuff for 1983. Like he does a backwards roll into a head scissors. It was pretty cool. And then he won with a slingshot body press, and there was no moonsault this week, and I was sad.
Yep. I think, and I mean I could be wrong, but I think someone finally talked to him and told him that that's not allowed in the Mid-South territory. And
I
hey,
I
this
bet
works.
it's back. I bet it's back next week.
I really hope not. I want to believe that there's some attention to detail going on here. Crusher Darsow versus Paul Garner. Again, where the hell did they get this week's jobbers? Darsow won with the over-the-shoulder backbreaker.
I don't know how tall Garner is. He's not that tall because they said he was like 230. But in terms of proportions, he's shaped like Giant Baba or Akira Taiwe, just disturbingly lanky.
Mm-hmm. Kendall Windham. It's another one.
Yeah.
So from here, they show us the opening, well, not really the opening video package because it had the actual commentating and not the Mid-South theme song. But they show us the same clip of Dr. Death Steve Williams versus Bobby Duncombe Sr. from Houston. Like maybe there were a couple seconds extra at the beginning, but this was exactly the same. And I mean, shockingly, if Dr. Death won when they played the clip the first time, Dr. Death probably won this time too. And in fact, he did.
And then JR said, not only will Doc be here next week, so will Dennis Condrey.
Yep. And so I'm gonna go to that right now, and we're gonna get the highlight of the show, in my opinion, here at the end. Let's go to the show closing here with Jim Ross, and he's gonna be interviewing two people who we're very familiar with.
Another impressive victory by Steve Dr. Death Williams, and don't forget, wrestling fans, he'll be right here next week on Mid-South Wrestling Live, along with another newcomer, Dennis Condrey. Of course, Steve Dr. Death Williams, no newcomer, but that was an impressive victory in Houston, Texas against Bobby Duncombe. Dennis Condrey will also be here next week, making his debut on Mid-South Wrestling. It's been an exciting hour. We've seen some tremendous action, some great tag team wrestling. We've seen the Mid-South Tag Team Champions and Jim the Anvil Neidhart and Hacksaw Butch Reed, and you've seen the very, very impressive combination, the new tag team combination on the scene of Mr. Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA. And we do have some time left in this hour, and matchmaker Grizzly Smith has arranged for the National Tag Team Champions, the Road Warriors, to spend some time with us here. We've seen some great tag team action today. The Road Warriors are here with us today, and it looks like the tag team competition in Mid-South is really getting competitive.
Well, they got a lot to offer here, but you're talking about two of the baddest cats walking earth, and that's me and Adamle. You know, we didn't get these belts pushing baby buggies around. Let me tell you, you got some competition here, but it ain't stiff enough. Oh, they're big and they're bad, but we're the biggest and we're the baddest. You take a look at them 22-inch guns there. You don't even have to flex them to get 22 inches out of those. We're here, and we'll come back. We want to destroy everything in sight if anybody's foolish enough to get in the ring with us.
There's a tag team combination of Mr. Wrestling number 2 and Magnum TA that looks to be some great competition, and they may want to go after these national heavyweight championship belts.
Hey, anybody want to go after these belts can come and try to take them. We've already dealt with 2. We've already dealt with Magnum. Now, we took care of the Briscoes. It doesn't matter who the tag team combination is. They want to come and try to take the belts from the Warriors. Just let them try to take them. These are our pride and joy. You know, we weren't at a little coffee party or anything winning these belts. We worked hard for these belts. And Hawk and I take too much pride to see these belts taken off our waist.
One thing you said, the competition in Mid-South is the greatest ever. I think it's getting better all the time. The tag team competition is getting better all the time.
That's because we're here.
The Road Warriors from Atlanta, the National Tag Team Champions, a lot of tag team action, a lot of great tag teams in the Mid-South area. And, of course, next week, don't forget, you'll see Steve Dr. Death Williams will be here. Also, newcomer Dennis Condrey. We've talked to the Road Warriors. We've seen Magnum TA. We've seen Mr. Wrestling 2, another great tag team combination. And the Mid-South Tag Team Champions, Hacksaw Butch Reed and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. They were also here today. It's been another exciting hour of Mid-South Wrestling action. So for our missing Boyd Pierce on vacation, we wish you well, and we've got to see you next week in Cowboy Bill Watts. And for my host, Buddy from Alexandria, I want to thank everybody for watching Mid-South Wrestling. And Buddy Nichols, thanks very much. And wrestling fans, we'll see you next week on Mid-South Wrestling.
Let's go bench 500, Adamle.
He forgot Buddy Nichols' name.
Well, you know, honest mistake.
We got a fun promo there by Road Warrior Hawk and Joe Laurinaitis.
So, listeners of the Oh My Godcast know that when Road Warrior Hawk's around, you can always count on a really quality quote. And if this was the Oh My Godcast, the title this week would be "It Ain't Stiff Enough."
It ain't stiff enough. Yeah, that would definitely only be the label of the Oh My God cast, and definitely not this week's episode of the show. But
this was not. It was not at all. It was not at all a Road Warriors promo. This was Mike Hegstrand and Joe Laurinaitis.
See, I didn't want to say Mike Hegstrand because while he wasn't quite there, he was growling. He was showing some personality. You know, Adamle was just talking like Joe Laurinaitis was there. And
I think that's just because Mike Hegstrand really is a lot closer to Hawk.
Probably.
By the way,
I was going to ask. Go ahead.
On the day that this was taped, the Road Warriors beat 2 and TA in New Orleans. and then that was their last appearance in Mid South until early 1985.
Awesome. Well, it's sad to see you go, Hawk and Joe, but we'll see you again down the road. I was about to ask why Logan Paul wasn't wearing the WWE United States title belt, and then I remembered not only did he lose the title to Eli Drake or LA Knight, I was at the fucking show where he lost the belt to LA Knight.
Oh yeah, that
Shows
was
you,
SummerSlam.
yeah, shows you how closely I pay attention to WWE and like really process it. You know, this show was so
Yeah,
bad. We didn't even have like part of what makes Mid South charming, even on a bad show, is we get the Bill Watts stream of consciousness ranting about Russians or amateur wrestling or Russians in amateur wrestling, and nothing of the sort. But by the way, well, I didn't mention last week, and I'm not shocked you didn't mention this because you're not a sports person, but whatchamacallit, Boyd Pierce, the people he was name dropping last week were Hall of Fame baseball players that he was going hunting with.
oh, well, no wonder he was name dropping them.
Yeah. It's at least better than when what's his name when Bill Watts name drops people that no one on earth has ever heard of.
Oh, who were the people in Mississippi that he was pissed off at that time?
Cat Sabulis, the Welcher
Ca-
from Jackson, Mississippi.
Katsaboulis the Welcher. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I just want to plug, as much as I love our friends at F4W and the Brian and Vinny show, notice they had to jump ahead 3 years to get ahead of us on Mid South. Like
Cowards.
they did, yeah, they did the first episode, or actually they did a couple episodes, and they did the dream match from January of 1982, and then decided that they just could not keep going in 1982, and were like, let's jump ahead to like when it gets really exciting in 84. So you know what? I'll take this as a great plug. The entire fucking archive right here, baby. December of 1981 to right now, you know, and hey, let's call a spade a spade. One of the things that got me into doing this podcast was a few years ago, I binge listened to Mike Mills and Brian Last's Mid South Wrestling podcast, and the last show they do is the end of 1983. So in about 6 weeks, we're going to be the longest running Mid South Wrestling podcast, period.
Right on. Good for us.
Yeah. And there's part of me, and I don't know because I didn't, bother to look in the threads or anything where they were asking for suggestions. But part of me thinks that the reason why that, people suggested that Brian and Vinny start with January of 84 was because that's right where, Mike Mills and Brian Last dropped off at.
Probably, yeah.
But hey, if you want to listen to the same person review all of them, we're almost at 2 fucking years. And I know I just picked up a co-host, 6 months ago, but you know what? He's been doing this a lot longer than B&V and CNS have been doing these Mid-South shows.
Indeed.
Yeah. And I say that with all the love and respect to Brian, Vinny, Craig, and Sean.
We should start a Patreon where we go back and like re-review all the ones that I wasn't here for.
I thought they were going to say go back and review Brian and Vinny's shows from the beginning.
Oh, actually, that'd be excellent.
See if their audio is any better or worse than our audio. Their audio from 2005.
I think
Yeah.
our
By the way,
audio is like better than theirs was back then.
oh, definitely. You know. Um, and yeah, we should start a Patreon since nobody listens to our shows for free, we should ask people to pay to listen to them.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when WCW raised the ticket prices and the sales went up.
I mean, to be fair, like I didn't want to release my book in paperback because I'm like, who the hell is going to pay $20 for this when they could just pay $5 for the ebook? And I haven't broken down the numbers, but at this point, the number of ebooks and the number of physical books are pretty much neck and neck.
I only bought the ebook, and I read as far to find my name.
So you read to the end of the book?
No, was that at the beginning? I read that part, whether it was the beginning of
Okay.
the end, and it
So,
was
so
like it was mostly
you,
it was mostly
Mhm.
like what you had already sent me the proofread, but then you worked me because you didn't put the part with my name in it when I did the proofreading, so I had to actually open the book to go find it.
Yeah. At the very end, you're in there under the acknowledgement page. Acknowledgements. Uh, yeah, you're on page 2 of the acknowledgements, and actually, you're one of the few people who get last named. You know, most people in here
Yeah,
got only got first named.
look at me,
So, yep, look how important you are. Somehow that lasted an hour.
indeed.
Let let's see how long this world class review goes. Let's go to Bill Mercer to introduce this week's world class show.
World Class Championship Wrestling. From the Sportatorium, the most famous wrestling arena in the world, here in Dallas, Texas. I'm Bill Mercer. Great to have you with us, and what a great main event. It is the young man from Stratford-on-Avon, England. Gentleman Chris Adams, who wants to take a shot at that American Heavyweight Championship. And his partner is the young man from Monte County, Texas, Johnny Mantell. They're teaming up against the American Heavyweight Champion, gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, who has as his partner one of the Freebirds, the ball one, Buddy Roberts. Well, that's a tremendous main event. And we've got another great event, too. That one features one of the Super Ds against Iceman King Parsons. But first, we have an encore match that's really going to rattle the arena. And that one features David Von Erich against the Ugandan giant Kamala. We'll have that next on World Class Championship Wrestling.
Okay, so tell me when you started watching this and they start talking about Chris Adams being the main event with a match he's really looking forward to, and they then show Johnny Mantell's face, did you scream thinking that they were going to do Chris Adams versus Johnny Mantell in a singles match?
No, because I knew what the match was.
Okay. Damn you and
Sorry.
your proper preparedness.
Very, very
So
properly prepared.
I was happily getting ready to do some fast forwarding here, because I figured, okay, they're giving us a replay of something we've already seen, so I can just go ahead and skip ahead 10 minutes. But no, actually, they showed us something we haven't seen before. It was from the Fort Worth show, of course. So if we were watching Fort Worth, we could have skipped this, but we didn't. Um, and it was David versus Kamala. And Friday threw in the towel when David had Kamala in the Iron Claw, playing off of what we've seen here in the past, where David has found the one thing that Kamala is afraid of.
If the Fort Worth
And
TV ever surfaces, that is when we will start a Patreon, and you'll have to pay me $100 a month for me to watch this fucking dreadful looking Fort Worth TV.
it's funny. I like the look of it, but I mean, yeah, like these shows are like 2 hours long, and as we've noted, they do not have a whole bunch of people, in the territory. So they're having to stretch to fill these 2 hours up. And Cornette talks
Okay,
about it. Mhm.
here's what I've determined. A bad world class show is a lot worse than a bad mid South show. And maybe it's just me, but like several bad short matches. I would rather watch several bad 2 minute matches than to watch like a couple of bad 10-minute matches.
Definitely. And I mean, if these matches were good, and not that they're all necessarily bad. But you know what I mean? If these matches were good, like fine, give us a whole bunch of good 7 to 10 minute matches. Great. But by and large, they're really not that good. A lot of them are at best passable. And I mean, yeah, this, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say this is 80s wrestling because, we talk about, oh, the Crockett territory was this, Georgia was that, you know, uh, I don't know who else really had hard-hitting wrestling. But I mean, this in a lot of ways was 80s wrestling, like especially with, Vince taking over with all the cartoon bullshit. It's like, you know, the actual ability to wrestle was not important, and it really didn't matter when you have people who are as over as some of the people on this show. Like Michael Hayes, Michael Hayes is better than I've always given him credit for, but it doesn't mean Michael Hayes is really any good.
Okay, I was gonna wait and bring this up during his match, but it is beyond my understanding how the fuck King Parsons is so over in this territory. I don't like what is his character beyond like he's the Von Erich's black friend.
He is the Von Erich's black friend,
That's
and
what I
he
thought.
came out he came out of the right uh locker room.
There you go. Things
And
used to be so much simpler.
by the way, to not put too much of a fine point onto this Mike Tyson Jake Paul thing, I just turned the thing off 30 seconds into the Mike Tyson fight because the stream is just went to hell in a handbasket even. So anyway, so the finish of the Kamala David match, as we mentioned, was Friday throws in the towel, and Akbar was pissed. So he began whipping Friday, and I quote, as if he owns him, according to Mark Lawrence. And thankfully, for the sake of this show, Friday is a white man. David was upset by the heel manager beating up the heel manager, so he confronted Akbar, only to be assaulted by Kamala, necessitating Kerry to make the save. Mike ran in and needed to be held back by multiple people. Akbar confronted Mike, so Mike punched him, and eventually all three Von Erichs had to be held back. So this feud, apparently, for some reason, must continue. And I mean, I guess I understand why, because like I said, they don't have that many people in the damn territory. But David has decisively beat Kamala now multiple times. Why the hell is this feud continuing?
Why why is anything? I don't know. I've given up. This show, I don't know. This is what a big clusterfuck.
I was reading the 84 Observer Yearbook. I mean, I sent you some stuff about it. And apparently Jim Garvin and Chris Adams are still feuding into April, and Dave is not happy about it.
I'm already not happy about it.
So I like I think they're a good combination, but yeah, like it, it I guess it helps. I've been watching the Von Erichs wrestle the Freebirds every week for 9 months, so my my tolerance for getting sick of a feud is pretty high right now. But
This
thankfully,
show
hmm?
The show is really interesting from like a historical perspective, but
Mhm.
it is not good. Like I was reflecting because of the show, because I was watching the show and it wasn't good. And I was
Mhm.
thinking about like the hottest products I've ever seen, a lot of them were booked fucking terribly. Like this, the fucking Attitude Era, like I don't know. It's disturbing that there's so little correlation between what's the word? Between
Quality booking and
audience
quality
interest.
wrestling.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
that too.
between audience interest and the quality of the show.
Well, so while there are definitely some flaws with this show, and we've discussed them, I'll be honest, I enjoy this next segment. So we're
Oh,
allegedly coming to the end of the Freebirds Von Erich's feud, and they're building up Kerry Von Erich versus Michael Hayes in a cage on Thanksgiving night. And the loser has to leave Texas for a year. Let's go to Mercer previewing that match and then quick promos by both of the participants.
Wrestling is a rough, tough, dangerous business. And then when you add a cage, you bring it into the realm of viciousness. For example, Kerry Von Erich and Ric Flair in a cage match. And you see what the element of the cage does. It adds that point of contact with a foreign object standing around the ring that you don't have in any other match. For reaction to this viciousness, let's turn our attention to Kerry Von Erich and his reaction. Kerry?
This is the cage that the world is watching today. This is the cage that's going to keep the Freebirds out of the ring while I beat up Michael Hayes. This is the cage that's going to send Michael Hayes back to Georgia. Michael Hayes, you're in a lot of trouble. You won't be able to walk back to Georgia when I'm done, baby. They're going to have to roll you back to Georgia because I'm coming at you.
And so with the addition of the cage, Kerry Von Erich finds, I think, some comfort in the fact that he will, as he says, send Michael Hayes back to Georgia. Well, Michael Hayes is standing right there in the blue dungarees. So let's go see what Michael Hayes has to say about all this.
Kerry Von Erich getting vicious here now as he takes Ric Flair's head down across the steel cage.
Okay, punk. So you and your sorry excuse has-been old man think he pulled one over on Fantasia by putting me in a cage like some kind of animal just because you had some luck with Ric Flair. Let me tell you something. This ain't Ric Flair, man. This is Michael Hayes, part of Fantasia, born on Bad Street, USA. And when I get you inside of this, you're gonna find out just how bad I am. Because I'm sick of you, I'm sick of your family, and I'm sick of Texas. But if I leave, it'll be by my choice, not by anybody else's. You got that, Jack?
And so Michael Hayes and Kerry Von Erich will meet in a cage match at the holiday Star Wars, and the loser must not wrestle in Texas for a year. We'll be back with Jose Lothario and Tonga John next on World Class.
All right. So I think it's effective. I know you were kind of ing when I was talking about it, but I think it's an effective thing here, and it makes sense that the feud would end in a cage. I'm assuming there's a reason they didn't even try to like hold it off for Christmas night, since, hey, if you're gonna make this go full circle, you might as well end it on the day it began, in the same gimmick. But I mean, spoiler alert, the loser of this match does not leave town for very long. So I guess that could be it too. They could have already had plans as to when to bring the losers back.
I have some breaking news from the Twitter account at Is Tess Still Dead? just tweeted at 11:04 p.m. Central Standard Time. Yes.
I'm relieved. I was worried that Test may have come back from the grave.
My analysis of this segment is the same as last week, and it will probably be the same for every Kerry promo that we see for the rest of the time. Kerry was fucked up.
No doubt, and it did not help that his dad was in such denial about it too.
No, it did not.
I don't know what Kevin was on back in the day, or because I'm assuming he was on something. I mean, everyone was, but thankfully he appears to be in a lot better place nowadays than he was.
Yeah, it's glad things worked out for Kevin at least.
Well, then we get superstar Jose Lothario versus Samoa John. And I got to say, of all the people who've stolen Billy Graham's gimmick, Lothario wasn't one that I foresaw. He's not even wearing a tearaway t-shirt or feather boa, for Christ's sake. Yeah, that joke didn't work.
Yeah, look, I assume that Jose couldn't have always sucked, and he's just 50 here. Like, look, Jose is as bad on offense as King Parsons is at selling. So, like, if a heel Jose ever wrestled a babyface Parsons, that could actually be the worst thing to ever happen. For the second week in a row,
way happen.
I can't imagine Parsons as a heel. It's too bizarre. It probably happens at some point. I don't know.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure he is at some point.
But yeah, for the second week in a row, the only thing good about this match was Tonga John selling.
And in case you tuned in last week, Tonga John, or as I call him, Samoa John, is the future barbarian.
The ball bearing.
Yes. And I call him Samoa John because despite being called Tonga John, he hails from Samoa, which are two entirely different countries.
I mean, they're in the same general part of the world. Tried to find. Yeah. Hold on. 1 second.
But it's like, say then he's from Tonga. Like instead, it's like it's Tonga John from Samoa. Are we gonna have Greenland John from Iceland coming up soon?
So in Todd Gordon book, which I'm just about done with, he's talking about when he would get calls from wrestlers trying to get booked. Says one afternoon I was interrupted and told there was a Bob Marion on the phone. I picked up the call in a deep accented voice, inquired about future bookings for ECW. I asked if he had ring experience. I've been wrestling since 1980, he said. Have you been on television? There was a pause. Yes. This is Bob Marion, I said. Yeah, I got that. I just had no idea who the hell Bob Marion was. Is that your ring name? Of course. Bob Marion. Okay, Bob, can you just mail me a tape of your work, please? I'm Bob Marion. Don't need no tape. This guy had brass balls. I was ready to hang up, but his moxie had me transfixed. Where would I would have seen you? All over, he said. Been in WCW and WWE. Tagged with Warlord. Warlord, the only tag team in WWE to feature Warlord was the Powers of Pain, where he tagged with Barbarian. This wasn't Bob Marion at all. It was Barbarian. His Tongan accent added a 5-minute Abbott and Costello sketch to the call.
See, it took me a second to catch on, but that was good.
Bob Marion.
That might be Samoa John's new name, Bob Marion. Oh God. So we're told, by the way, that Jose the Body Lothario knows every move in wrestling, and I wrote, "Don't tell the Young Bucks that." Actually, don't tell
Oh
Jim
dear.
Cornette that.
I mean, Jim Cornette wrestled Jose Lothario about 100 times. I'm sure he knew.
But I mean, at that point, 70-year-old Jose Lothario was 60, and the only move he did was a punch to the face, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was every punch to the face in wrestling all put into one.
It's funny because I was a kid at the time. I was 11 years old. I had no idea who the hell Jose Lothario was outside of he apparently trained Shawn Michaels. And so it's like WWF did such an amazing job of getting this guy over as like this man with one great knockout punch that I was a lot older than I should have been by the time I realized that he didn't really win all of his matches with one knockout punch all the time.
No, he won with the bombs away here.
Yeah. I couldn't remember the name Bombs Away, so I just wrote the whoopee cushion because I mean that's what it was called when he did it as Doink.
Jose Lothario did it as Doink.
Or Matt Bourne. I mean, yes, I know it's called the bomb. It's not called the Bombs Away because Matt Bourne invented it, but that's I think who most people tend to think of when they see or hear the Bombs Away.
I don't even know where I got the name Bombs Away. I just knew that was what it was called. Was it like did Ray Stevens do that? I don't remember.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's what I think. I don't know. But yeah,
Well,
the whoopee cushion, the same thing.
Super D #1 with General Skandor Akbar and Super D #2 versus Iceman King Parsons. I noted that it's possible that the D's only have one cape, as two wore to the ring last week and gave it to one to wear, and this week one wore the cape to the ring and gave it to two to wear.
Maybe that's why they just had singles matches at this taping because the other cape hadn't come in yet.
There you go. One fan, and I mean one fan, randomly began chanting for Mike Von Erich, and I think that may have been Chris Von Erich.
One of Mike's friends from high school.
After approximately 37 minutes of action, Parsons hit she calls that the rear view, and one ended up in the ropes. The ref randomly pulled Parsons away, and we got twin magic, and two then pinned Parsons with a small package. It's nice that we had handicap matches on both shows this week.
It was so boring that I began rethinking my position that we should at least keep these world-class reviews going until May.
Only 6 months to go. And then we may make the mistake of continuing to go. Let's go to Bill Mercer, who is going to get a quick interview with Jim Garvin on his way to the ring for the main event tag team match.
Here comes Garvin. Here comes the young lady with him. Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin. Well, to see you again. I wanted to ask you, yes, it's me again. I'm sorry. What do we call this young lady since the first sunshine is gone now?
Besides calling her beautiful and gorgeous like myself, these people don't have any respect. I want to get the record straight right now. This is Sunshine. The other one's a phony, just like that Englishman up there, a phony. The other one is no longer in existence. She's fired.
And you expect to see her at ringside tonight?
I'll fight her. She's never going to be back.
If she shows up again?
She's never going to show up.
Come back. She'll never be here.
You're sure of that?
I know it.
Yeah, well, what if she does? What are you going to do?
She can't.
She's not coming back, all right? This is my Sunshine right here, and gorgeous Jimmy Garvin's feeling stronger than ever. And the other girl, that poor excuse for a valet, she's across the tracks.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy Garvin.
All right, so I'm pretty sure I've at least implied this, but it's so weird seeing the woman who we would know as Precious with bleach blonde hair. It's like I'm just so used to the, Jim Crockett Precious with dark hair, and I mean, I don't know how long she lasts here with blonde hair, but I'm pretty sure it's going her natural hair color shortly. Um, but yeah, we're informed this is the real Sunshine, so she doesn't even have a name yet. But for lack of a better word, Sunshine number 2. And I mean, it was a fine promo. I mean, it wasn't anything to write home about, but it was a fine little promo here.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, sure.
I think it's wacky that Buddy Roberts has his headgear back on.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but here we are. And now, if you recall last week, I did not get the world-class main event with the country whipping match. But of course, this week I get John Mantell from Monte County and Chris Adams versus Jim Garvin and Buddy Roberts. Sometimes life isn't fair. So
This
the
match
fans. Mhm.
this match started with 16 minutes left, and I just wanted it to end so I could go take a depression nap. But then, like, as has happened many times when I was watching the show, I had suffered so much through a terrible undercard that I forgot that the main events are often like kind of good. Okay, we poke a lot of fun at Johnny Mantell on this show. He was working his ass off here. He was the highlight of this match.
He took a terrific beating as the babyface in peril, like to the point that I was able to drop my, natural hatred of the man and, be like, holy shit, this guy is not half as bad as they tell people he is.
He's really not bad.
No, just that it's hard to, take him seriously in the position he's sometimes pushed as.
Yeah, he's not bad.
I,
He's just way over pushed.
I noted that this crowd was chanting that they wanted the original Sunshine. And just a reminder that like 2 weeks ago, like they were cheering over the idea that she would be grabbed and put over a babyface's knee and spanked. It was so easy to manipulate wrestling crowds back then.
Now the crowd was chanting, "We want Sunshine," but luckily several of them held up pictures of the original Sunshine to make sure that we knew which Sunshine they meant.
Yes, because I mean, hey, Fritz, Fritz may have thought they meant that they wanted Precious, Sunshine number 2.
Fritz is easily confused.
Yeah. Now, although this show was taped in November at night, they may have been chanting that they want sunshine, as in the actual giant yellow ball of fire above our heads.
I got sunshine on a cloudy day.
See, it's not just me who randomly breaks into song on this show.
Yeah, I really shouldn't because I can't sing, but, never let that stop me.
When has that ever stopped me from singing on this show?
There we go.
So Adams gets the hot tag, and while Adams is running wild, Mantell didn't quite leave the ring. He was bent over in between the top and middle ropes, presenting his ass to anyone interested. And no one was interested.
Poor Johnny Mantell.
Finally, Sunshine ran in and attacked Precious for the disqualification. Now, you might recall that Precious was not a legal participant in this match. So I guess if we're going to have a disqualification, Sunshine is going to give us a goddamn disqualification. She goes after I wrote Chris Adams, but she did not go after Chris Adams. She went after Jimmy Garvin before the heels bailed. I wrote by default this was the best match on the show, but I mean I'm not going to even give it 3 stars, but it was a fine television tag team main event, even with the shitty finish.
I think I would have gone 3 stars had the match had a finish, maybe even a little more. I didn't did I miss something? Because appeared to me that Sunshine attacked Sunshine 2, and for some reason, Adams and Mantell were declared the winners. Did I miss something?
I didn't even realize they were declared the winners.
That referee raised their hands.
I can't say I paid enough attention to notice that. Let's be honest, the world-class referees are quite biased.
God, fucking fuck.
Was David Manning or Bronco Lubick the referee?
I think it was Bronco Lubick.
I don't know why, but like this finish made me think of like, remember when they did a fake babyface turn of Triple H back in the fall of 2000 before he was revealed as the guy who was behind Rikishi running over Austin?
Yes.
Well, 1 week on Raw, they did, like Stephanie was trying to get Kurt and Triple H to be friends, and Triple H, being the smarmy dick that he is, pretended to be friends, but Stephanie was sick. I think she had a cold or something, so she left the show, and so Hunter went to Mick Foley and got a WWF title match. Hunter was somehow disqualified, probably for beating too much ass. And then he cut a promo saying that if you want a disqualification, I'll give you a goddamn disqualification. And
I remember that.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought of that here while Sunshine somehow got the heel team disqualified by attacking their manager.
Yeah, this didn't make any goddamn sense.
Oh my God. So that means she attacked their manager. Then she attacked one of the participants of the heel team. And because of this, the heel team got disqualified.
The fucking just blatant favoritism and officiating in this territory is so appalling.
I would like to think that somehow Sunshine fucked up the finish, but I don't know what the finish could have been that led to the babyface's win, outside of like maybe she was supposed to attack Garvin behind the referee's back, but the referee was too stupid to be distracted. And so since it was obvious that, I mean, even that doesn't count, because I mean, even if it was obvious that he wasn't distracted, that he shouldn't have rang the bell anyway, and he shouldn't have raised the hands of the baby faces. I don't know. There's probably no way to defend this.
You remember during the pandemic when they were doing all those fucking cinematic matches, and they had the swamp fight between Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt? And
I never watched that match, but I've read enough about it that I feel like I have.
It was fucking terrible, but I just, for whatever reason, like, I don't know, it, like, Bray was declared the winner, but I couldn't figure, like, I just wrote winner due to plot. Like, I don't fucking, that's what that made me think of. This was just, they win the match for reasons.
I assume that, like, they were trying to do a Hardy cinematic compound match, and no. Like, even if WWE has every person that made the Hardy compound matches except for Matt Hardy, apparently Matt Hardy was a big part of what made those matches special. Maybe one day when, for some reason, we want to do a show, but it's over the holidays, we should go back and watch all of the Hardy Universe matches. Although it probably gets old after like the first 2 or 3.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, let's go to a show closing promo with gentleman Chris Adams.
Well, Chris Adams, must have felt good to get your hands on gorgeous Jimmy Garvin.
It really did, you know, Bill, but better than that, I have the tapes.
That's right, the tapes, the videotapes, the film that Sunshine 1 sent you.
Sunshine sent me the tapes.
What have you found out?
James Garvin's total medical history. You know, as well as finding out some very, very interesting things about you, Garvin, I also have your weakness. I found it. I've got it. I'm not going to reveal it. I'm not going to reveal it. I'm just going to use it. Garvin, you are finished.
You know, that was something he kind of avoided the other day. He said you couldn't find anything in his medical record, but you have found it.
I found it. And, you know, if Sunshine wants to be in my corner on the day of the reunion show, she's more than welcome.
Well, she certainly did a job tonight. The fact that you are going to have her there, what does this indicate as your association? Is she going to be your valet type or just a friend?
I think we'll wait and see for that.
Okay.
We'll wait and see, Bill.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. Right. Congratulations on your bout. David Manning's over here. Well, David, it seems that Chris has analyzed the tapes, the film, and the medical records, and this thing in the Sunshine, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, is going to turn on Garvin.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Garvin can say what he wants. He would not be this mad if there was not some valuable information in those tapes and in those medical records.
And, of course, one thing that we can turn our attention to, too, as Chris mentioned, the holiday Star Wars, is the fact that there's going to be a match that will be tremendously fun-filled. That's Kerry Von Erich and Michael Hayes.
That's right. And, you know, they just recently added the stipulation there's going to be a steel cage around the ring. This means that it's going to be one-on-one. Michael Hayes, when he made this challenge, I was right in the ring when he made it, and when he made this challenge, he had something in his mind. Now there's a steel cage. It's going to be one-on-one. The best man's going to win, and whoever the loser is cannot wrestle in Texas for 1 year.
And we'll see you.
When Chris Adams ended his promo, why couldn't they just slowly roll the credits at that point? Like, extra slowly, because even though, like, for some reason this show went longer than the usual show, usually goes about 42 minutes, this one went 46. Like, why did we have to fucking hear David Manning cutting a promo?
You know it would have been funny?
If Michael Hayes came out and kicked his ass?
Yeah, that would have been good too. I thought it would be funny if Jimmy Garvin got in contact with somebody in England and got Chris Adams tapes, but then he couldn't play them because the VHS format is different.
Oh my God, that is amazing. Let's go back in time and tell Fritz. Oh, look at this. After the Thanksgiving show, because, I mean, I'm assuming, I haven't looked at the results, but I'm assuming Chris Adams wins the title.
I believe that is to come, yes.
Yeah. So, like, that'd be great. So, like, Garvin's like, okay, asshole, you won the title by getting my tapes. I have some money to spread around. I know some people. I got your tapes. And then they do the skits with, you know, him receiving the British VHS tapes. And also, why? And I mean, Garvin forgot. I'm not Garvin, but Adams missed a sentence in there, because when you hear him, it sounds like Garvin's medical records are on his tapes.
Well,
who knows? Maybe Sunshine was filming the doctor's appointments. I don't know.
I mean, she'd be filming stuff. Could have been.
By the way, I was going to look up if England had HIPAA laws, and I didn't.
I guess we'll never know.
Let's see. No, the UK does not have HIPAA laws, but it does have other laws and regulations that protect patient data. But they're all from fairly recent. Like, one's from 2018, one's from 1996. Apparently in 1983, it was A-OK to steal each other's medical data in England.
Like 11 or 12 years ago, I was in the UK with like a university group, and somebody in our group like went into a store and they bought a DVD, and I was like, you know that won't work in your DVD player at home, right? And apparently people have no idea that regions are a thing.
I mean, I'm not saying I don't know that, but I mean, I'm not really gonna like laugh at anybody for that because I mean, I don't know. I don't. I think it's a perfectly believable thing to get wrong, or perfectly reasonable thing, I guess.
It's funnier if it's VHS tapes because they actually are like physically different.
Yeah. Oh. So somehow we made this show go an hour and 40 minutes. That is our
How
true talent.
that yeah, it I don't know. What did we even talk about? We are experts
Um,
at doing shows about nothing.
don't tell NBC this. We might get a cease and desist letter.
Or an offer to do a sitcom.
Indeed, I guess. Indeed.
You
Um,
remember I don't know if you would know that like I don't know, 15, 20 years ago on Comedy Central there was a show Shorties Watching Shorties.
I remember the name now that you mention it, but I don't think I ever watched it.
So the premise is that they were like these two babies that would watch different stand-up comedy clips and just kind of riff on it. And we could do one where we watched old wrestling clips and just kind of made fun of it. Like, I don't know. I
That
don't know. I'm
could
trying to
be
think of a
interesting.
punny title. I'm trying to think of a punny title, and I got nothing.
Oldies watching oldies? Oh.
Fatties watching Maddies.
Ooh, that could work. Now would be fatties with an F or fatties with a PH? Because we're cool and hip. And
We
don't
are.
cool
We are.
hip people these days say cool, hip, and spell things with a PH?
Well, that's just part of the rib because we're secretly from a long time ago.
There, yes, secretly. Um, it makes you wonder, like, I'm pretty anal about my spelling and grammar, and from knowing you, you're pretty anal about that too. But we both grew up in the 90s when it was uncool to spell things correctly. How the hell did we end up this way?
Uh, Probably because we read.
That, yeah, that's true. Although admittedly, like while I enjoyed reading as, a kid, I got a lot more into reading as a teenager. But yeah,
I just read insatiably as a kid and as a teenager, and then I don't know, up until grad school ruined reading for me. But it's something that always stuck with me because I did, even though it fucking ruined my life, I did learn a few things that I kind of carry in my mind. And it was very early, one of these professors, we were talking about grammar, and came up, he said, grammar is the most basic form of logic. And I thought, that's correct. That makes sense. And that also explains why so many people are bad at it.
very true. Ah, all right. So before we wrap a neat little bow on this week's episode and get ready for the good shit starting next week, at least on half of this show, you want to go ahead and plug the Oh My God cast?
Yes, the Oh My God cast, ohmygodcast.com. It will be back. I don't think it's going to be back this week because I just have too much stuff going on. We are not to pull the curtain back because we never ever break kayfabe on this show. We're gonna try to get ahead for Thanksgiving week so we don't have to record. Now, to be clear, I got nothing going on Thanksgiving, but Arya's gonna be out of state, so she requested that we get ahead of everything.
I
And
mean,
see, yeah,
it's going to be easier for me because I'm going to be going to Pennsylvania. Actually, first I'm going to New Jersey for Full Gear this coming weekend, and then I'm going to my brother's place for a week in Pennsylvania. And I don't want to force them to listen to half a podcast. Even one taped at 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Tomorrow night, I am taking my wife to a Depeche Mode cover band, and I don't know what a Depeche Mode cover band is, so that's exciting.
I was about to ask, did you ever figure out who the hell that is?
My wife played me some the other day, and it I don't know, it wasn't my thing, but it sometimes you do things for your partner.
You make sacrifices for the people you love. Like when I was
Yeah.
dating my racist ex, and all he wanted to do was spend every weekend at either the Providence Place Zoo or the Boston Aquarium. Like it grew old to me, but he enjoyed it, so I went with him. And I will say, I like the Providence Place Zoo. I like the Boston Aquarium. They're both very nice to go to, but they don't change very much. And so when you go there every weekend, it grew old after a while.
Because racists love zoos and aquariums.
I mean, he found that's how he liked to relax, by going to the zoo and the aquarium. And I mean, we all have our things. I watch nonstop classic wrestling to relax. So I guess whatever boats your float.
Boats your float.
All right. So that's
Indeed.
going to do it for this week's show. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Thank you all for listening. And we'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Bye.